the whole topic here is Mythic Plus in 6 players. All right, so six player Mythic Plus. Now, what would this achieve? How impossible or possible would this be to implement? And okay, just setting the record straight, I don't think this will ever happen in the current expansion in the world within. No. So if this could potentially be something, this could be somewhere around probably midnight.
If they will ever play. I mean, let's talk about some of the where this is coming from our end, and I do have something to add that came up recently in the last year or so that could facilitate a 6-player M+. But one of the things that this reminds me of is the request from people to have 10-man raiding, and not necessarily because 10-man is like a magical number, but because you always have if you have a group of friends or a guildies, there's always about more than 5 people, but not 20 people to do content with, and 6 is between 5 and 10, and it would add different levels of content that you can get to. For instance, our group of friends that we do keys with we're about 6-7 people, and we can never actually do a dungeon with everybody, and that kind of sucks, right? So it would facilitate that kind of a player base. Obviously, it adds more flexibility, and this could have big impacts for the game, because if we're gonna have
because
6-player Mythic Plus, obviously the 6-player would be still a DPS player, and it would fix so many issues. Just think about how many DPS players exist in WoW as opposed to tanks and healers. There's obviously a larger number of DPS players compared to every other elf.
Has been.
So it would essentially bridge that gap and give more people a chance to actually find groups. Essentially, that's might not be a very interesting thing for you to hear, but the reality is that if you are playing a DPS player and you don't really have a pre-made group, you're probably gonna wait way longer to get into a group than if you would play a tank or if you would play a healer. So it's clear that the proclivity of players to play DPS is just way higher than it is for a tank or a healer. That would be one thing. There would be also a whole different thing that just happened in Dragonflight.
What are you talking about, Flame?
Well,
we have augmentation. That's what happened. How many times have we seen big boy MDI streamers and Race to Wolf First and all those guys saying that it's kind of problematic that we don't have a second
the concept of the support. So this is all new to WoW, right? The concept of support class, and it's still let's say an unchiseled,
let's call it virgin territory,
like me. But it's still not fully disclosed as a topic, right? What does a support mean? Does it have to be for a DPS spec? Does it have to be for a healer spec? Does it have to be its own separate thing? Because clearly they're having a very hard time finding a space in the game for augmentation. What is augmentation? Are you going to be a DPS? Are you going to be a support? But if you're a support, are you a healer or are you still a DPS? Is your DPS going to matter? Well, if you don't have high DPS, people are going to look oh my god, but you don't have high DPS, man.
No, I think they did a good job putting the identity of augmentation, and I think if people really wanted the Bard in World of Warcraft, if you would have had 6-player Mythic Plus, then hey, here's another type of support where you have ding 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 ding.
Here's a question for you. What is the future of the support class in WoW? What do you think the future is?
Well, that's the thing. Augmentation is going to carry on doing its thing, buffing damage and augmenting the people, while a Bard could, I don't know how lore-wise that could be in, but I'm just saying, a lot of people ask for Bard. You remember all the videos out Bard class and
let's say there's Bard and what else? Are we gonna have more support specs, or are we just gonna have augmentation?
Okay, that's interesting. Now, it could be a brand new support class in the Bard, or you can go back to what we talked about in previous videos, where you would add another spec to classes where they would act as support.
Well, now we're getting something.
Now we're talking the same language.
Because everybody was but Shaman is a support class, Paladin is a support priest, class. Right? So there's a lot of specs, and I think they've done a lot of, ground testing with Classic. I know that they do a lot of stuff with Classic, making mages heal and stuff like that. So it's not out of the scope of possibility. Yeah, there's a rule.
Season of Discovery.
Yeah, Season of Discovery, yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely something on the table. We don't know what's on the table just yet, but it would make more sense for augmentation to not be the only support class in the game. You would have to add more. Obviously, it would make sense maybe even for a mage to have a support class. So essentially, more classes to have another support spec. I don't think we're gonna live in a world anymore where they're going to destroy a spec to make it something else anymore. I think we're past that. Combat turning into outlaw didn't really happen.
I hope that will not happen.
Yeah,
again.
survival as well.
Okay, they did that already. That was smoked.
So the only thing is more stuff like extra specs. But where do you fit all of these extra specs?
Where do you fit, and when does it? When
and
does
we come back to our topic.
Okay, this is the thing. Like, just coming from the ground level here, you know how many times you either didn't have the spot for your group of friends because the party was full for a dungeon, or even I think more problematic is when pugging. A lot of the times, okay, you wouldn't play the meta spec, and you would
play Valdrakken waiting.
That's the new game mode, right? Just circle down in Valdrakken. But that would definitely solve part of these issues.
For sure.
Having space for another. Now, it does beg the question though, because right now, in the queuing department and how you go into how will it balance out? Because people are probably going to try, let's bring in 3 tanks, 1 healer and 2 DPS. Hey, listen, I'm all up for that.
Two groups of people never having any tanks anymore. That's horrible.
That's a different topic of discussion. But 6-player Mythic Plus would 100% first off give the incentive for more people to start playing because there's more space, and also the plugin situation where, okay, sure, apart from the meta slaves that would only invite you for playing a meta spec, there's a lot of times where you would queue up probably into a group of people who are willing to take you, but you just got there a second or 5 seconds late than the other guy, and you were out because you didn't catch, the 5 queue team completed. Now with 6, you have more chances to get in, plugin wise. Same thing, because you gave the example, we have like 7 people circling around doing keys with our little group over there. There was so many times where somebody either had to leave room for somebody, or just it was hard to like, listen, dude, don't be upset, but we already have a group here and that's it. And I also believe it would make more the dungeon experience. It would make it more fun. You would have a little bit more chaos over there, but you also will bring a lot more tools. Obviously, the dungeons would need to be not overly different design, but
that's very important what you're about to say right now, because it definitely steers into a direction that people have been asking for, where it's not this. If we have 6 people Mythic Plus or dungeons in general, we cannot have dungeons be this complicated. It's going to be a little bit too hectic. There's way too much going around. There's way too many people in a confined space. So they would have to not necessarily simplify the dungeons, but tone down the number of mechanics present at one time, which is, listen, you're going to see once the season 1 starts, it's going to be a little bit busy, this expansion around, when it comes to the amount of stuff that's going to happen around you. Some people like that, some people not as much. Definitely affects the majority of the players a little bit more. So having more people is going to most likely come with the addition of dungeons being slightly simpler, some slightly less chaotic. And they're already laying grounds for this. They have been doing this, even if they didn't really intend to, since Legion. Mythic Plus was supposed to be like a one-time thing. And it's clear, ever since Legion, Mythic Plus has surpassed rating as a desired endgame content. And if you really look at online games in general, people tend to favor more short bursts of gaming and short segments, like 20 to 30 to 45 minute sessions of gaming, so they can go off and take care of their kids, go throw out the trash or whatever. They don't really like rating, although is one of our favorite ways of playing World of Warcraft, is dying. It's nobody has the time to stay 2 to 3 hours at a time at a computer in the modern day of gaming. We might find time, but it's not convenient for a lot of the people. So Mythic Plus tends to be, the escape, the counter choice when it comes to gameplay. So obviously that's going to evolve more. We already know that it's already bigger than raids. So what's the next step?
It definitely makes sense from that point of view, because I think they also know that the player base generally is getting older and older, and I don't see as much fresh blood coming in. Sure, there's a couple of exceptions here and there, but at the end of the day, the commitment you have to go for when it comes to Mythic rating, because that's like the biggest commitment. Even if you're in a chill guild and nobody's like really pressuring you, you still have to be on time, respect the rules and all of that, and you have to make the grind a little bit to get the gear. people who Mythic raid know what I'm talking about. Of course, you have the LFR, which is by far, the option for everybody who doesn't have time and you want the small dose of content. Normal rating is pretty easy as well, heroic, whatever. But Flame pointed it out exactly. Like Mythic Plus has become the go-to gameplay mode because WoW has become this seasonal. Then seasonal games do tend to attract people who want to get like a small dose of gameplay. Having a 6-player Mythic Plus in the future would add even more to this. Now, complexity of dungeons, the design, they did mention that they want to simplify the dungeons. They haven't really...
that didn't age well.
Didn't go, yeah, it didn't go. It aged like a very good and expired case of milk. But regardless, if they're going to introduce this, and I really hope they do it, it's going to be a W all around. Not only because you're going to open this, and this is not only Mythic Plus I'm talking about, like the dungeons can be queued up by 6 people. This is the thing. They have to tune it around 6 people, but you can do...
If they ever implement this, it would be like a whole flip on the game engine, the encounter design. Another reason why they're already laying down the ground is what happened with Dragonflight, when they brought old dungeons in and they completely revamped them with new mechanics, modern pathing, and all of that stuff. Not all of them were successes, Vortex Pinnacle, but a lot of them were pretty cool. And Throne of the Tides was one of my favorite dungeons, even though it was a little bit crazy, but it was really cool.
All of the
Cata ones,
pre-WoD dungeons, all of them had their crazy stuff in Mythic Plus. It was
refreshing and it was fun. It was one way to engage with old content without feeling like I'm playing classic WoW, but at the same time feeling like, oh, this is a rich part of the game that I don't really engage with a lot of the time. So it's great that, every now and again, I remember the days when I was underwater in Vajir and leveling, right? So I feel like they're already,
if they could pull that off, adapting old dungeons to the current Mythic Plus, they can definitely adapt, the new dungeon design for 6-player Mythic Plus.
Well, either way, there has to be a future for Mythic Plus. Like there has to be a revamp of the gameplay so that WoW doesn't feel like the same old formulaic game. And they're definitely doing this in other aspects that are easier to attempt, like professions, like world content, like reputations. We already saw a big revamp of that. You could probably say a revamp of classes when it comes to the hero talents, coming back to an actual tree in Dragonflight. And hero talents are not the most amazing thing, but it's something. It's something else. It's something other that you can engage with as a red paladin or a fire mage to engage with your class, as opposed to just copy pasting a build from Wowhead or Icy Veins and stuff like that, right? So WoW has to change and to adapt to make it more interesting. You could say that why 6-man, why not 3-man dungeons? That essentially just continues
there used to be scenarios.
Yeah, we obviously have that, but that just makes it even more difficult to give people what they want, essentially to give tanks content, to give DPS content, and whether or not you want to admit it, it is a big problem right now with the amount of people that just don't like to go into non-DPS specs when you play the game, and that needs to be addressed.
It's gonna get much more relaxed, and you're gonna have a much bigger pool of players who are probably just sitting out, being not that comfortable, let's say, in a social environment. However, this is an MMO, so at some point you have to get social a little bit. Regardless, if you're gonna have 6-player dungeons, you're definitely gonna get even those people in much easier, because as Flame mentioned, it's probably gonna fill the DPS role, so you're probably gonna look at comps where you have 1 tank, 1 healer, 4 DPS, or 1 comp, 1 healer, 3 DPS, and 1 support.
Hey, that's the thing, because you know what else? They worked a lot, kind of indirectly and abstract behind the scenes that, a lot of people didn't really pay attention to, was Torghast. It started with Torghast, where Torghast would be a content that adapts to your role, and if you're a healer, mobs have different levels of HP and different levels of damage. It's the kind of similar with follower dungeons, so they're making their content flexible to the role that you want to play and making it so that your role is not required to engage with the content. You can just choose whatever. Same with Delves, by the way. Delves can be approached, but if you want to be in your tank spec, you can do Delves. If you want to be in your healer spec, you can do Delves, right? So all of that is basically a part of the game. So they're taking these baby steps to hopefully something larger. Obviously, we're speculating here, but if you would ever want to input 6-man dungeons into the game, taking these kind of steps makes a lot of sense.